All right, let's go ahead and kick it off. So, on the agenda today, we have a presentation from Ben Summers from the International SOS and Global Insurance Update. We're going to talk about rideshare upgrades after that. Next, we're going to talk about some guidelines we're going to provide for you for after trip comparisons in regards to personal time and airfare. We're going to talk about some exception documentation requirements. This one will be a little bit more broad. We're going to go over a best practice that we think will help you out for the non-employee travel claim form. We will then proceed to talk about resort fees and other fees, kind of some workday/policy updates. Then we'll segue into more general workday updates and finish off with some pre-submitted questions we had, and then just open up the floor to questions. So now, without further ado, before I get started and hand it over to Ben, again, quick reminder, please put all questions in the Q&A section. That helps us track all the questions and make sure we answer them. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This info meeting today will be recorded again. And yeah, thank you all for coming. On to Ben. I'll stop sharing.
Thanks, Renee. Morning, everyone. I'm going to throw up some my own slides. 1 second here. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that. Great. Okay. Thanks again, Renee, for extending the invite. My name is Ben Summers. I'm the Director of Global Travel Health and Safety, formerly known as Global Travel Security. We're in a little bit of a rebrand. Global Travel Security has felt a little bit intense for what we do. Global Travel Health and Safety, I think, is a more accurate reflection of what me and my small but mighty team of two does to support global travel on the UW campus. We're going to really start things off with a bang this morning, talking about everyone's favorite morning topic of insurance. And there have been some pretty significant changes in the insurance space, specifically the global insurance space, starting January 1 of this year. So that's what we're here to talk about. As Renee said, please do feel free to put any questions in the chat or the Q&A. I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes after my spiel and try to answer any questions. But to start off, kind of the 30,000-foot view about global insurance is answering the question, what is global insurance? It's a little bit different than the way we think about our private US health insurance, in that there's usually two different parts to global insurance. And this is definitely true for the global insurance that UW travelers have when they go overseas. And that is that there's an insurance provider for the UW, that is Cigna. So they're the ones who are actually paying claims, paying providers, and for us, paying International SOS. And International SOS is the emergency assistance provider. So of course, if we have a traveler who, let's say, breaks a leg, they're not going to be calling Cigna. There's nothing Cigna is going to be able to do to help them get connected to a hospital, help set up a direct billing agreement with the hospital, point them in the direction of other supports. That's not their area of expertise, but it is the area of expertise for International SOS. So emergency assistance provider is who actually provides the on-the-ground support to travelers, who they call when they need to use the insurance. And then Cigna kind of exists in the background as the insurance provider, paying the bills, kind of creating the scope of coverage, all that stuff, other stuff. So we really want you all to remember International SOS. Cigna, they're important, but they, again, just kind of exist in the background. I think it's also important to address the question of why. So why do we ask UW travelers to have insurance when they go overseas? And why do we ask them to register their travel, basically letting us know where they are when they're overseas? This graphic on the slide was not intended to be read, so no need to squint and read all that text. But what we're really trying to illustrate here is that we need to know where folks are because we need to be able to be prepared to provide them with support. So this all starts with travel registration, which I'll talk a little bit about later, but this is essentially letting UW know where you're going or where you have folks who are going. Registration is only for official UW travel. So if you have a staff person who's traveling to Mexico on a personal holiday, that's of course nothing they need to register. But if you're supporting staff who are going to Florence for a conference or going to Beijing to participate in a poster session, something like that, then that's something that should be registered. If they're representing UW, if it's paid for or sponsored or administered by UW, it should be registered. And that creates awareness for us. So it gives us an idea of, at any given point, we know we have 20 travelers in Lima, we've got 30 in Nairobi. And that allows us to provide proactive support to travelers. So for example, on the map there's one box that references the earthquake that happened near Marrakesh in Morocco back earlier in the summer, or last summer rather. And because we knew that we had folks in Marrakesh, we were able to reach out to them very, very quickly after we became aware of the earthquake, even before it became reported in the news, check in with them. And then in this case, it was actually a group of study abroad students. And so we knew that communication networks were going to be flooded and actually inoperable in some areas. And so we're able to connect with those students' emergency contacts and reassure them that we had made contact and that everyone was safe. There's a couple other examples on there. We had travelers in Tel Aviv in Israel when the war with Gaza broke out in October of last year. And again, we're able to touch base with them really quickly, give them guidance, pass along formal information from the State Department around evacuation, and provide assistance in that way. And then the final one there is we had a PhD student who was studying in Khartoum in Sudan when civil war very suddenly broke out last April. And in a similar kind of story, we're able to assist with his evacuation. So there's a lot we can do when we know where our people are. When they register, it also lets our insurance provider know that they're there. It lets International SOS know that they're there. So it just raises the level of preparation in case of an emergency. We can step in and assist. It's much easier to be proactive in a situation that we become aware of than it is to be reactive to a situation where oftentimes in these types of events, things are more than a little bit chaotic. So registration has a lot of benefits, but really the ones that we want to point out here are it creates awareness and it connects travelers to their insurance coverage. Okay, so changes. What's different this year from last year? This is somewhat of a convoluted table, but really the big takeaway is that red text on the faculty and staff side. So as of last calendar year, if you were a faculty or staff member traveling abroad, you had coverage for really catastrophic things. So if there was an earthquake in the country where you were headed, we would be able to assist with your evacuation and the insurance would pay for it. And all faculty and staff had this coverage. They didn't need to enroll anywhere. They didn't need to go and sign up, put a credit card down, pay a premium, anything. It was just the university pays for it, everyone has it. But what it didn't have was any kind of coverage for medical expenses. So to go back to that example of if you were a traveler and you broke your leg, we could assist with the medical evacuation and pay for it. But all the costs related to your actual medical treatment, surgery, anything like that would be on the traveler. So you'd be calling your private insurance, trying to get them to help you, and most likely paying out of pocket for the treating hospital, and then submitting an insurance claim when you get back to the US. Obviously not ideal. If you're a faculty and staff member representing UW overseas, you've been sent there by your unit as part of your professional duties, and you get injured or have an accident, you would expect the university to have some coverage. And that was not the case last year. So of course, huge exposure, huge gap in support. We wanted to remedy that, and we did that this year. So now when faculty and staff or students go overseas, they have both coverage for those big catastrophic events, natural disasters, political crises, medical evacuations, and they also have coverage for accidents, illnesses, the things that sometimes happen when we travel. And all of it's covered. For faculty and staff, there is still no direct enrollment. So this is a blanket policy, meaning that all faculty and staff are covered without having to actually go anywhere and enroll in it. If you're going overseas, you have it. And so this is a brief overview here of what's included in this coverage that we have under Cigna. We have a pretty big, pretty high medical maximum. It's $500,000. We've never had a traveler reach anywhere close to that. As an example, we had to assist with an air ambulance out of a part of Western Africa that's a little bit harder to get to. Private air ambulance, we needed to fly across the Atlantic to get to Boston. That costs about $150,000, and that's about as expensive as it gets. So I think our travelers are safe within that $500,000 medical maximum. We also, on top of that, have a $250,000 benefit for medical evacs and repatriation. So the difference there is that medical evacuation is you're needing to get medical care in another country or a different location. We're going to be able to transport you there and pay for it. Repatriation means you need to return to the US because of a medical condition that you've developed, and we can assist with that as well. There's no deductible, there's no co-insurance. So really, ideally, travelers should not pay out-of-pocket costs. Like I said, there's evacuation coverage for those more catastrophic events as well. And there's coverage for mental health treatment. So that was really important, of course, for us to make sure it was included. There's a few things that aren't included, and I want to make sure to call those out. Preventative care. This is also not travel insurance in the sense of if you something happens and you miss your flight, if you develop something medical happens and therefore you aren't able to travel, this insurance is not there to reimburse the costs of your flight and hotel. Also, if you have travelers and you become aware that they plan on skydiving when they're going overseas for a conference, you should let them know that your insurance through UW will not cover you in case of an injury. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but just know you won't be covered. There's also no coverage for dependents as well. So if you have faculty and staff who you support who are traveling and they're bringing dependents with them, we have a list of providers that have been vetted by our insurance broker that we can provide with them as alternative options for coverage. And then I'll just reiterate this again, there's no individual enrollment. So faculty and staff are not going to a Cigna website and signing up. They're not filling out a form. They just have this coverage. But the way in which our insurance provider knows that they're overseas is through our travel registration process. So that linkage is really critical. They need to register because that's the way our insurance provider knows that they're overseas. And when I say insurance provider, I'm referring to Cigna and International SOS as well. So this is a busy slide, but really the big takeaway is the registration lives on the OGA Global Travel website. There's a registration button. It should be pretty intuitive. It then takes you to this screen where there are these 4 different what we call buckets, and travelers need to sort themselves into the correct bucket. So if you're a faculty and staff traveler on official UW Travel, you're in the lower left-hand bucket. If you're a student and maybe you're also a staff member, you hold dual roles, you're still going to register as a student. Students have to register. There's something called the Official International Student Travel Policy, or OIST. We all need more acronyms in our life, but OIST is the policy that says students have to travel when they're traveling for official UW business. For faculty and staff, it is strongly recommended that they register, and it's strongly recommended for all the reasons that I just shared, all the benefits that come with registration, including accessing the insurance. And when I say accessing, I'll show you what that means on the next slide, but it lets our insurance provider know that they're overseas, and it lets them download the app through International SOS, where they can actually reach out and request assistance if they need it. Without having the app, they can still reach out to ISOS through a phone number, but it's a little bit more convoluted. So we want them to register so they get the app. There's an app for everything. There's an app for International SOS. The final note that I'll share here, which is not on the slide, but there is something coming down the pipeline that some of you may be aware of called NSPM 33, or National Security Presidential Memo 33. And that is going to be going into effect sometime over the next couple of years. And it's essentially saying if you are traveling on federally funded research, you have to register your travel with your home university. So even though it's a strong recommendation now, this might be heading in the direction of becoming a requirement. Okay, so more on International SOS and this app that I've been talking about. So when travelers register, we're providing them with information on their insurance as part of the registration process. And we're going to provide them with a link that says, go to this website, set up your ISOS account, which essentially means put in your email address, UW email address, and create a password. And then they'll be sent to a UW page that prompts them to download the app. A screenshot of that page is on the lower right-hand side of this slide. There's a QR code, scan the QR code, download the app. At this point, this is really intuitive to all of us. A few things I want to point out on the app, and there's a screenshot of what the home page of the app looks like. There's this bottom toolbar here, which with a bunch of different icons, travelers can click around and figure out what those are. But the one on the very right-hand side is a phone icon, and that's the button that our travelers click if they need insurance or assistance. And then they can either call or start a chat with one of 27 ISOS assistance centers around the world. So ISOS is kind of the gold standard in this space. They work with hundreds of thousands of medical providers around the world, and again, have 27 different assistance centers located throughout the world. So they're really comprehensive in the support that they're able to offer. It could be anything from, I need help scheduling an appointment, to I'm in the hospital in such and such city for such and such reason. Can you help with setting up the billing between the insurance and the hospital? And they will do all that. So the goal is that if you need to go to a hospital, you never have to deal with a bill. ISOS will manage that for you. They're going to pay the bill and then get reimbursed by Cigna later. And we have this happen not on a daily basis, but an almost daily basis with the huge travel volume that we have at the university. So it's really important that ISOS is here to support that function, and they do it really well. So let's say, again, let's go back to that broken leg example, which I know is a little bit gruesome, but it happens. If you're in the hospital, contact ISOS, let them know what's going on. They will work with the treating hospital to set up the billing, to schedule follow-up appointments, and to work with the insurance on making sure that all of the pieces are covered. So you don't have to worry about any of that. It's a huge benefit to travelers and something that your average traveler doesn't have access to. The other thing here is a check-in button. So travelers can share their location with us in the Global Travel Office by clicking that button. So this is kind of recapping what I just shared, but what we want travelers to remember is that it's not so different than it is here. If something is really time sensitive and urgent, of course, we want them to call local emergency services, the 911 equivalent, but then bring ISOS into the loop as soon as possible, because they can provide a lot of assistance with billing, with those follow-up appointments. And then for more minor things too, if you feel like maybe there's been some kind of you're having an allergic reaction to something, or there's a gastrointestinal issue, which is very common when traveling. ISOS can help you find a doctor, can help schedule the appointment, and again, can help settle the bill. So really that A to Z support. And then my final slide here, just sharing some reminders about some other resources. We have a UW 24/7 global emergency line. We have a red phone that we carry around that rings when travelers need assistance. This is very much a misnomer, but for non-emergency questions, you can email travel-emergency@uw.edu. Again, I realize that's contradictory, but feel free to reach out to that inbox with your non-emergency questions. If something's really time sensitive, we want folks to be calling the 24/7 line. We have a website with a lot of information. You can just find it somehow, UW Global Travel. And one final note on the billing and claims process here is that, as I mentioned, ISOS and Cigna have direct billing set up with one another. So when ISOS is supporting a traveler, they're just going to bill Cigna and manage that between the two of them. Our travelers don't need to get involved. But if a traveler, let's say, just goes to a clinic for 15 minutes, gets an antibiotic prescribed, walks out the door, pays $50 for it, and never involves ISOS, that's okay. There's a claims process through Cigna that they can work through and get reimbursed for that $50. So the coverage that we have here, it's really comprehensive. It's meant to cover all things great and small, and yeah, is more user-friendly and comprehensive than the option that we had last year. So this is a definite upgrade, but we do want to encourage folks to register their travel so that they can get connected with all this information, read it ahead of time, and be prepared heading out overseas for whatever they're headed out for. So that's it for me. I see there's a bunch of questions, so I will try to address some of these. So starting at the top, Debbie, your question is travel insurance required? That's a good question. It is for students. It is not for faculty and staff, but it's provided. I think the question is more, is registration required? And registration, again, required for students, not for faculty and staff. Even if faculty and staff don't register, they still have this coverage, but accessing it and using it may be a little bit murkier for them if they don't register. So hopefully that helps answer that. How does personal travel work when combined with conference travel as far as insurance coverage? Oh, Liza, thank you so much for asking this. So our insurance policy includes something called a sojourn travel benefit of 15 days, which is essentially personal travel for 15 days. So let's say your conference is between March 1 and March 5th. You could tack on 15 days, some combination of before and after of personal travel, and have that covered by the university. Okay, so you could leave on March 20th or February 20th and have those 10 days covered, or leap year, February, that's 8 days covered, and then travel for a few more days after the conference and have that travel covered as well. Julie, it would be helpful if you could send a PDF of coverage eligibility and how to opt in that we can share with our travelers. I believe on our website there are actually some PDFs that you can download for that kind of information. But feel free to also, if you're not finding anything on our website that looks helpful, you can reach out to me directly. We can put that together for you. I'll share my email in the chat. Okay, Byung. Do faculty who go overseas to speak at a conference count as official UW business? If the faculty books their own ticket, are they eligible for this as well? Yes and yes. So if they are representing UW, and even if they paid for it themselves, it really should be registered. It's considered official UW travel. They will be eligible for this coverage, and again, they'll have it when they go overseas. But we do want them to register so we know where they are. We can provide support if we need to. Coverage for travelers conducting research in remote domestic locations. Unfortunately, this is coverage only for international travel. That includes US territories, but it does not include the contiguous US, so the 50 states. This insurance coverage is not extended to domestic travel. When it comes to conducting research activities in remote domestic locations, I would definitely point travelers in the direction of environmental health and safety, who might be able to provide some resources. There's also the Compliance and Risk Services Office, which may have some domestic coverage options for folks. Liz, is there a cost to the department when someone registers? There is not a cost to the department. Does the insurance apply for faculty visiting from another country? So this kind of goes back to Byung's question around domestic coverage, or Julie's question about domestic coverage. There is not coverage for visiting faculty because this coverage is really meant for use abroad, not in USA coverage. So not really the option to apply this coverage in those types of situations. It wouldn't. Medical services rendered would not be covered. The number of that federal travel regulation, yes, it is NSPM, I'll put it in the chat, 33, really rolls off the tongue. National Security Presidential Memo 33. And that is something that is coming down the pipeline. Okay, Judy, that question I'm not sure about, so I'm going to leave that one about Workday job aid. I'm definitely not an expert.
We can save that for ours.
Lauren, when NSPM 33 goes into effect, will we need to have travelers provide proof of registration to receive reimbursement? I was literally in a meeting about this before jumping into this meeting. Short answer is we don't know yet. We don't know what that's going to look like because we haven't figured out exactly how that is going to be implemented and what the mechanisms are to make sure that we know that folks are registering. So I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see on that one. But there's going to be some kind of way to link registration with reimbursement, most likely. Oh, Val, thank you for asking this question as well. Can we register our faculty or do they have to self-register? Registration is linked to the UW Net ID, so they have to be the ones to register. If you need help with this, or if it's not working this has happened, it's broken for multiple days at a time. What a shock, I know. We can help with that registration. So you can always reach out to us at that travel emergency email, and we can create the registration from our end. But admins are not able to create registration for travelers who they're supporting. They need to do it themselves. And that's because there's some signature documents that they may have to fill out, depending on where they're going. Michelle, should they wait to register until they are planning to travel, or should they register now because they may be traveling? That's a really interesting question. I think the best practice is to register once an itinerary is finalized. And that's because when you register, you're asked for dates of travel and the location, so city, country, and that's it. But we want that itinerary to be as accurate as it can be. So I would say just encourage your travelers to register once they know that they're traveling, once that itinerary is set, basically. Kimmy, how about non-UW personnel, research collaborators attending overseas conferences using UW funds? Registration requires a UW Net ID. So unless these folks have UW Net IDs, they don't need to register. But if they were assigned a UW Net ID, sure, they can register and their travel will be covered. Katie, do they have to register for each trip separately? Yes. So this can be a little bit confusing for folks, and we end up having to go back and follow up with people because they've registered multiple trips at one time. Ideally, each trip is registered separately so that you have a separate registration for each trip. It's not the end of the world if they put in, I'm going to Cambodia in June, and then later on they say I'm going to Tokyo in November, and it's all in one itinerary. That's okay. But our travel registration system will understand it that they're abroad that whole time. It's not incredibly sophisticated. So yeah, it's best if they create separate registrations, but it's not the end of the world if they don't. Okay. Young, did you say that admins can email the global travel team to register on behalf of someone, or only the traveler can do it? Only the traveler can register within the travel registry. You can email us if they're having trouble doing that, and we can create the registration for them. Our travel registry is known to be a little bit wonky in moments because the software provider we use has some periodic issues, I guess. And so this happens where our registry goes down and folks are trying to register and it doesn't work. If they're having questions or running into issues, just direct them to us and we can create the registration for them. But the bottom line here is that other people can't register on behalf of the traveler.
Awesome. I think that is about all. We have two smaller questions in the chat real quick. If that's okay, Ben. Rafi asks, what does coinsurance mean here?
Yeah, coinsurance is where you pay a percentage of the medical expense. So you may pay 30% for coverage for a multi-day hospitalization or something like that. And our coinsurance is zero, meaning you don't pay any part of any medical expense that's covered under the insurance. So hopefully that helps.
And then last question, and then we'll let you go, Ben. Tony Bennett asks, does this apply to UW staff working remotely in the UK, for example?
So, Tony, that's a really good question. It would apply if they are traveling as part of their job. So when they're actually in the UK, if they maintain residency there, their primary health insurance is obviously it's through the NHS, right? This is not to replace private or public healthcare in other countries. It is to provide coverage for travel and medical or illnesses that medical incidents or illnesses that happen during travel. So if this UW staff is traveling to Germany as part of their official duties, they can register their trip and get this coverage. But if they fall ill during their time in the UK, they should rely on their NHS coverage for that, assuming that they're maintaining residency.
All right. Thank you so much, Ben. Always a pleasure to have you on, and this was a very informative slide. Even I learned a lot, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you all so much for your attention, and feel free to reach out anytime with questions.
All right, let's let me share the slides again. No, not that. Huh. Just a second. And any questions you guys have for Ben, you can put in the chat and we will send them to him after the meeting. Or in the Q&A section, sorry. Yes, please make sure to put all questions in the Q&A so we can keep track of all of them. And make sure all of them get answered, frankly. All right, here we go. Come on. All right, we see in my slide here. Okay. All right, on to you, Sam.
Okay. Really quick, we're just gonna move on to ride share upgrades. So we've been receiving / seeing a lot when we review ERs and MPs. So we just want to review a couple of things since we also, again, get these questions. So somewhat recently, Uber and Lyft have added, per se, another service to their rides. So it's going to be Uber Comfort, Lyft Extra Comfort. Lyft and Uber XL were already there, but we're just going to add it to the group. And a new priority pickup fee. I guess it might be new, might not be, but it's been showing up now. All of these types of rides or fees are considered upgrades to the standard UberX or Lyft. So we just want to make that clear. Again, Uber Comfort, Uber XL, Lyft XL, Lyft Extra Comfort, and then the priority pickup fee are considered upgrades. So again, if the traveler and or department would like to reimburse these upgrades, a business justification is required and to be noted in the memo field of the rideshare expense item. Again, please make sure we put the business justification into the memo field. some are asking if that is not available or if it's a personal reason per se. Can a comparison be made? Comparisons cannot be used for ride shares or card services. Those are more for airfare when there's personal time, or for example, if a business justification cannot be used for a car rental if someone upgrades to an SUV per se. But again, comparisons cannot be used for ride shares. Another thing we want to note is that Uber Cash cannot be used for paying for ride shares. So just again, Uber Cash cannot be used. That's part of the rewards program. And just again, context, rewards programs concerning coupons, gift cards, etc. Any rewards points are not reimbursable. Next slide, please. And then again, so let's say we have a traveler who took one of Uber Comfort, Lyft Extra Comfort, or maybe even an XL, and they tell their department, hey, the reason why I took this upgrade is because it was the lowest cost available. If it was, the traveler must take a screenshot as documentation as proof that it is either the same or the lower cost in comparison to a standard UberX or standard Lyft. So again, a screenshot at the time of booking. You can't, again, make no comparisons are allowed to be made. What we were finding is that Lyft and Uber most of the time nowadays do like recommendations. We want travelers to be a little bit more careful and not to just rush and just click whatever's the first one. What we found is that Uber does have an option to sort by price. So again, we recommend clicking that. And if you are using Lyft, maybe they prefer Lyft. It's just to be extra careful on making sure they pick the lower or the most economical cost. If your traveler wants to make a reservation, that is perfectly fine to do. Again, as long as it's the standard UberX or Lyft. If it's an XL, please make sure you have a business justification. And then lastly, on ride shares in general, wait time fees are not reimbursable. We want to make sure when a traveler requests Uber or Lyft that they are timely and ready to just jump on. I believe I was finding out during some research that I think it's for Uber every minute or so, there's going to be an additional cost. So we would just want travelers to be ready when they book on Uber or Lyft or car service. Okay.
Excellent. All right, next, just real quick, let's talk about after the trip comparison. So I know it's kind of the Wild West, and typically, if you get something that's kind of close to what we're looking for, we will take it. But we just wanted to provide some more solid guidelines for this to kind of standardize the process and standardize the comparison in general, just for after the trip. Now, we have updated our website to add some requirements overall for comparisons, but I would say this is still just kind of generally what we want to see in a good comparison after the trip. Of course, we always recommend they obtain the comparison at the time of booking. Can't recommend that enough. That's the best practice. But if it didn't happen, people make mistakes, it happens, then we do accept after the trip comparison. So essentially, we would just need it to be the same days of the week of the business. So if the business is Monday through Friday, we would ask that the comparison be another Monday through Friday. We also ask that the comparison dates used be, because obviously, you need to use future dates. And we know that if you just use the next week, it'll be more expensive. So yeah, that's a given there. So in selecting your dates, please use dates in as far in advance as the actual ticket was booked. And so please work with the traveler on that one. And of course, please make sure they are the same destinations. Believe it or not, we have seen that happen. And yeah.
Okay, so just really quick, some exception documentation requirements. This is going to mostly focus about car rentals and upgrades. Again, going back to what it was for car service, we're kind of just repeating it for car rentals. So if a traveler does book a non-full-size sedan car, they use the reasoning as, or the business justification as, it was the only or the cheapest option. Again, at the time of booking, they should screenshot what was presented at the time and use that as additional documentation. I know majority of the time when we do send backs for those reasons, there is a large amount of travelers who are not able to present that documentation. So if that is not possible, an economy comparison may be created, and the lesser amount between the two will be reimbursed. Some business justifications shown on the slide. Again, if you're carpooling with large groups, maybe you're hauling students or just hauling other faculty members or other travelers are new to business, again, that you can get a minivan, you can get an SUV if needed. If you're hauling large equipment or just equipment in general, or taking stuff from, like, let's say, as I use an example from the classes, if someone was hauling fish from San Francisco to Seattle, and that's the only way to haul the specimen, then obviously maybe a truck or a minivan or an SUV is definitely allowed. And then again, another possible one would be research in remote areas. Maybe you're going off-roading into the mountains or somewhere extremely remote, and you would need four-wheel drive or 4x4. That is also allowed.
Okay, and now a little bit on the non-employee travel claim form. So we have seen a lot of people have issues where they're not, if you select, I think it was the EU GDPR notice, if you select an answer to that, and then you select an answer to the question on personal time, that it would delete the other answer. Or if you selected EU GDPR or personal time first, it would delete the other one. And as these are both required things, we need the confirmation of this on the form. There were some sendbacks, quite a bit of sendbacks, I'll say, for that, as we review all of them. Now, one thing we found in trying to recreate this issue to see what was causing it was we were not able to recreate it when using, because we use Adobe Acrobat. Adobe Acrobat is the tool we use to edit the form and maintain it, basically. So when we found that when we do it, we have a blank copy on our machine, which we are then opening and updating and messing around with to test things and then saving it. So we found that the glitch happens if you open it in your browser, which I think is a default for most people. So one recommendation we have to avoid this, and if this doesn't work, please tell us and we can help you troubleshoot or see what's going on, give us a better idea what we need to fix. But essentially, we found the best way to go about it was to download a blank copy of the form from our website, from that forms page that we all know and love, making sure that we download the specific one. Save it somewhere, blank on your computer, downloads, documents, wherever you will know to find it. Then open it in Adobe Acrobat. You can do this either by setting Adobe Acrobat as your default on your computer, or you can go into Adobe and open the form from there. There's an option from there where you can click open and find the file where you saved it and open it. And this way you will be able to check all the boxes. I have some other ideas of possible solutions, but please let me know if that does not work for you and your circumstances, and we can do some troubleshooting.
Okay, so resort and other fees. So we just want to really separate resort fees, or also known as amenity fees. We were notified within the last 2 months, so around December, that resort fees are now to be included into the room rate when you do lodging itemization in Workday. That is a policy provided by the SAM manual, which is going to be under the Office of Financial Management, or the Washington State Office of Financial Management. Previously, again, we were stating resort fees, amenity fees would be included into the taxes portion of the lodging itemization, but as of December, we have now separated that. We have also noted it into the lodging, all the lodging per diem items. So if you're going Alaska, Hawaii, foreign, in-state, out-of-state, domestic, there is a note on the instructions, or help text, if you want to use that wording, mentioning that, again, resort fees are to be included in the room rate. So just please make sure you keep an eye out for that. I believe also, if you try to look up the resort fee expense item during the itemization, it shouldn't allow you to submit in a May error out. So just a heads up that the resort fees are going to be separated as of December. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that, guys. I was confusing other fees, I guess. All fees. So anything that says service fee or resort fee, that will be moved into the lodging itemization. So it might cause more overages that will require a justification or an exception, sorry, a per diem exception. So again, lodging itemization will include, for the room rate, resort and other fees that are service fees, cleaning fees. And again, any sort of anything that's listed something fee, that should be put into the room rate.
Okay, now let's talk about some other more general updates we have made to Workday, or not necessarily all that we have made, but that have been made. So we worked together with the reporting team to develop a fancy new report in Workday called the Travel Dashboard. Now, one thing that I did not like, or one thing that I thought they missed out on the Expenses app, was that it only includes expenses for yourself. It only includes the functionality and things for you, for submitting expenses as self. Our form includes everything, or our dashboard includes all components to travel reimbursement that you will use, including non-employee travel and all expenses on behalf of others. It's another app, much like the Expenses app. So if you are familiar with the Expenses app and how to add apps, all you need to do is add another app in Workday. It's just called Travel, and it has everything that we could think of. So it has a link to our website, of course. It has direct links to begin the actions of creating expense reports on behalf of others, creating spend authorizations, and then creating them on behalf of others, and creating miscellaneous payments, miscellaneous payees, and then running the R1142 report, and the other one that no one uses as often, so I forget its name, but it's there. Oh, it's the R1142. And then there's the R1126, which is the one that most people use. And all of that is all there, including the R1372. So assuming you have the roles of miscellaneous payments data entry specialist and expense data entry specialist to be able to submit these things on behalf of others, then you will have access to the full functionality of this dashboard. Just something we thought we'd point out. It's been out there for a little bit now, but now here's your official announcement. Now, also, you might have noticed we added the privacy notice. We updated the privacy notice on the non-employee form as the privacy office provided us with an updated privacy notice. Because the other one mentioned Ariba and this one now mentions Workday. So the new, just to let you guys know that the privacy notice has been added to the expense report, it is in the help text of the header. So employees should be able to see it there and find all the information on what information is being collected on them. Now, another thing about the Expenses app, as we were just talking about it, the Expenses app that we showed you to add in the very beginning at Go Live will be leaving on March 9th. It'll be replaced by the new Expenses Hub app. It has a very similar functionality, pretty much exactly the same. Although if you have a cash advance, it'll tell you what your cash advance outstanding balance is, which I think is cool. It is still mainly just for employee as self functionality. However, I'm told it is configurable, so we will be looking into how we can configure that to make it serve you better. But just so you know, the Expenses app, if you have it on your menu, it will disappear March 9th. So, but worry not, you can just replace it by the slightly better, well, I'd say it's better, it's nicer, the Expenses Hub app, which does the same thing. And finally, as we have managed to catch up on our transactions, we can now refocus on creating guides again. Hooray. So finally, we can create we're working on the Travel Advance Reconciliation Guide, which we will post by the end of this week, probably Friday. It will walk you through step by step with pictures, I might add, for those visual learners out there, on how to reconcile a travel advance. To boot, you'll notice that some of you may know that, back in the old days of Ariba, Sam and I would police reconciliation of those. We have not been doing that as much as we've been waiting on opportunity to make this guide. So please look at any advances that you may have outstanding and begin collecting receipts and working on and thinking about reconciling them. We will begin to email you to do that, and we will also provide you with the guide, which will be as thorough as we can possibly make it. So as the Johnson & Johnson shampoo says, it'll be tear-free, which I think is actually tear-free, but oh well. All right, now we're gonna move on to some pre-submitted questions we got in, before the class, not class. And Sam, kick it off.
Okay. So one big question, or controversial question, you could say, is how do we split budgets? And this is asked in every class, every meeting. When is that going to happen? Where's the instruction? Where's the job aid for how to split budgets? So I'm going to make it clear first. There is no job aid for this. This is just us here at Travel working with departments, trying to find the best way to split the budgets and still follow compliance and policy. So what we discovered is that if you are familiar with the expense report module, in selected items, or I'm pretty sure most of them, they will have an itemization to the right of the screen when you click that item. For example, rideshare. You can click on the add button, I believe. And then you can input, you can choose the expense item for itemization, which is, you would just say rideshare, and then put in the amount. Your work tags should be the same ones that are already inputted. And then you can add another one on that itemization, same thing, rideshare, an amount. And then if you are putting it, of course, on another budget, you can delete all the work tags on that second itemization and input the other budget into there. We just want to recommend that, well, it'll air out either way. But if you're splitting things 50-50, you cannot put the exact amount. So let's say there's a ride share for $100. You want to 50-50 it out between two budgets. Unfortunately, you have to put the first one as, let's say, $50.01, and the other one for $49.99. If you do 50 and 50, again, Workday will error out and say it's a duplicate error. So that's the only thing I would say just a heads up on, but you can split budgets with the itemization in each line item or expense item. When it comes to meals, we are allowing the per diem legacy and reduced expense item to split meal per diem. There is no other possible way on the meal per diem expense items itself. So if you are splitting budgets, you can do it again on the per diem expense or per diem legacy and reduced expense item. Please make sure you're clear about obviously the dates and the start and end time for travel status. And if there's any provided meals, please make sure you include that into the memo field if you're doing a split for meal per diem using that expense item. If we do have time later, maybe we'll show a demo. If not, if people are curious and want more one-on-one help, please, again, just email us at Travel and we're happy to jump on a short meeting and just show you really quick. But again, itemization within the expense item, or if it's meal per diem, please use the per diem legacy reduced expense item.
And I will say, as always, with everything that we do, you can always, if you have a super complicated situation and you need more brains on it, you can contact us and we can meet with you or just let you know what we think. I'd say Sam and I are pretty good with the Workday. I think so. Not to pat myself on the back, but if you do have any complicated situations, just give us a call, shoot us an email, and we can always hop on a call with you and help you walk through it. All right, now next question. Let's talk about fare classes. So question says, what are the standard economy fare classes on various airlines? And now, this back in the day, this probably was a very simple answer because it was probably named the same. So nowadays, they'll have their own different names because they're all special. So Delta, I believe, is main cabin. Alaska, also main cabin. JetBlue, that one, I think it's called True Blue, right? Or Blue. United, I believe theirs is called Economy, and American is also Economy. But no one really flies American nowadays, strangely, at least from what we see. So essentially what we're looking at is for standard economy, when we say standard economy, we're not thinking of the bare minimum, bare bones fares that don't allow changes. We're not thinking of Alaska's Sabre fare, which is always the example that I use. We're thinking about Alaska's main cabin. So basically, look at what Alaska's main cabin provides. And if you're unsure, just kind of use the example of Alaska and Delta's main cabin. And for those Southwest people out there, it's Want to Get Away, which is a great thing for them to name it because I would want to get away from Southwest. Now, for all of these, I know they're all different names, but in Workday, when you're entering it, we're not going to have all those names because we would have a super long list for one option. So all of them will just choose economy in Workday as the fare class. I know it's main or coach. No one uses coach anymore, but some do. But it's all just if it's just the standard fare, you can just use economy.
Okay. Alternatives to flying. What is the most economical and lowest logical cost? So we'll just quickly review the policy for that. Again, the department, I know you guys want to always come to us and say, what is this and this? But again, we allow the department to make that final decision. If a traveler chooses to do a certain ground transportation personally, because for personal reasons, and the department thinks that's a personal reason, we base that off, I mean, we don't base it, but the basis for a comparison should be made using flying. I know there's a lot of questions about Portland. Obviously, the biggest thing I want to mention is time. So if time is not an issue, sure, you can say the train is the most economical. For example, I think someone brought it up yesterday for 50 to 70 bucks round trip. Sure, if you are looking for the lowest cost, that's fine. If time is not a factor, that is also fine. But if you're looking for, I just want to get them there now, then obviously flying would be the best. On the website, we base flying in general because Portland is just one city per se compared to everywhere else around the states, and flying is in general the most, or we would say the most economical in comparison to driving or taking the train across the states per se. So again, if you're not sure, like Renee already said, please reach out to us and we'll help you determine what is best for the department. But again, we really want to push the department to make that final decision as they understand the whole story of what the traveler is doing in comparison to us here at Travel Services that will say just flying. Flying is going to be the most economical. We don't know the whole story. If you want to explain to us the whole story, that's perfectly fine as well. But again, we base everything off of flying, but places like Portland or Vancouver, maybe driving, or maybe the train might be more economical.
And if anyone does take the train to Portland, please let me know if it is as fun as I imagine it to be. All right, next question. When inputting room rates into Workday, can we average the nights? Short answer is no. I know I said this in a previous meeting, and frankly, I was wrong. So ignore what I said in that meeting. Listen to what I'm saying now. Averaging is not allowable. The way we recommend and, well, frankly, require that you do it is through the itemization. You can have it gets kind of tricky in the itemization. So the easiest way to do it is to just have, and this is the way I see people do it mainly, is to have an expense line for, one day, another expense line for the other day, and so forth. If you have any more complicated situations or, you have some weird stuff, I know some of you had some real weird stuff, and I've seen it. Props to y'all. But if you have that and you want to know how to do that, again, you can always email us. And once we finish this other guide and we start thinking about other guides we want to work on, we might look into making one for this kind of itemization for tricky situations. But, please know, I know we can only make guides for the simplest cases, really. And there will always be some really complicated stuff. So that stuff you probably just have to keep emailing us and we can meet with you.
Okay, so another thing is about proofs of payment or payment methods. We don't require the last 4 digits. We're not going to look up the number and try to find someone's bank information. Again, I know some departments do redact that, which is perfectly fine to do. We actually most likely will recommend to redact any bank information or card information. But again, if a receipt says paid by Visa, paid by credit card, paid by check, paid by cash, it is acceptable. We do not need your bank account number or your last 4 digits of your Visa or MasterCard or whichever credit card you're using. It just needs to make sure it states paid by credit card, paid by cash, etc. If the receipt just says paid, we will ask for a payment method. Again, the payment method does not need to include numbers. You're good. If, let's say, it's paid and the traveler did pay by cash, and there's no way to exactly prove it because it's not through a credit card or a check or anything like that, you can go ahead and write a perjury statement explaining that the traveler paid for so-and-so expense with cash, even though, or not even though, even if it says it's just paid, it is paid by cash. But again, a perjury statement will work in this kind of situation. But yeah.
And I see y'all's responses about the Portland train. So thank you for letting me know about that. I am definitely going to try to take that. On to the next question, foreign receipts. Hey, Sam, sorry. Could you go back? There we go. On to foreign receipts. So this is one of those situations that best we can do is a case-by-case basis for compliance. So I know foreign receipts, depending on the country, they can be better than ours, or they can be they can be lackluster. And frankly, the same thing can be said for even rural hotels. I saw one where someone stayed on a hotel that looks like it's on the side of the road in the middle of the highway, in the middle of nowhere. And the best they could provide was a handwritten, like college ruled notebook receipt. Just let us know the context, and we'll handle it case by case, because that's frankly just the best way for us to handle it. And there's so many different things that are going on in the world, and we can't establish a blanket policy for that.
Okay, so we had not too many questions, but someone did bring this up. It's a unique situation. So we haven't seen this happen too often, but sometimes you're or the traveler is in a foreign country, and it might be one per se that is a little bit more remote or maybe in a dangerous area. Can they hire a driver to drive them around and guide them, etc.? We say it's allowable on a case-by-case situation. We recommend that department to reach out to us or discuss with their administration internally. There are some places you can check, I believe, the travel government website that states countries and how, at what level, I think 1 through 4 have how dangerous it is to travel there. But again, we would definitely recommend reaching out to our team to see if where they're going is allowable to hire a driver. We don't want everyone just hiring a driver if they're just going to, let's say, Vancouver or Toronto, but if it's more remote areas in Asia or Africa, or depending on which country, again, it's going to be a case-by-case situation.
All right, let's get into car rental classes. We got into airfare classes. Let's get into more classes. So basically, the way that we go about car rental classes and determining the allowable classes is basically, so what we do is we look at the class of car that's on there, and if we're unsure, because usually, I know what a Toyota Corolla is. I know what a Camry is. I used to have a 98 Camry. I know that thing was a beast. But basically, for some of the more complicated ones, like I hadn't heard of the Nissan Kicks until I got this job. So we just look at the enterprise, we look at the car rental agreement, which we require the final itemized car rental agreement. It'll show us the kind of car. It'll say Nissan Kicks. We'll look up what the heck a Nissan Kick is, and we'll see that it's an SUV. So, for example, with the Nissan Kicks, I actually saw someone rent this. I was like, I have no idea what it is. As you can see here, it says subcompact SUV. Now, the policy is that travelers are allowed to rent up to a full-size sedan or equivalent. I know sometimes there's hatchbacks. Doesn't happen as often, but I'd say that's around the same, reasonably allowable. So up to probably, I think a Chevy Malibu is considered full size. It's basically just full size sedan. Anything bigger than that will need a justification. And right now, I know Tesla's, it also depends on how the car rental company classifies it. For example, Teslas are in a weird space. Yeah, they may be sedan-ish, but a lot of car rental companies consider them as luxury vehicles. And I would say unless they're the last remaining car, which would require some sort of statement on that they would be considered an upgrade as premium or luxury. How far did I cut out on? Oh, yes. Sorry. I hear I'm cutting out. Apologize. You would think the Wi-Fi would be solid in the office, but I guess not. Anyway, Teslas. So I'll repeat what I said on Teslas. So Tesla Model 3, Model X, all of them, they're in a weird class of their own because they are considered luxury vehicles at this point. There may come a time where electric cars are not considered luxury vehicles, but that time is not now. When that time comes, we will reevaluate. But right now, for the most part, car rental companies such as Enterprise and National are putting Teslas in their own class, specifically the luxury class. And sometimes they do have an electric class, and usually we do find that Teslas still are in the luxury electric class. So that would still be considered an upgrade. Now, if ever you're not sure, I know they keep making new cars, they keep making them weird nowadays. Strange times we live in. You can always shoot us an email and just, ask us. Alrighty, so now we will get to the questions that you have asked in the Q&A. So as always, please make sure to put all your questions in the Q&A. So, because we will focus on those and then see if there's anything else in the chat. So if you have asked a question in the chat, please put it in the Q&A. And we're going to go from most recent and fill in the rest of the time until 12. So if you do not have any questions or you don't care to hear any answers to questions, then this would be a good time to hop off. This is now a Q&A session, and I'll kick it off to Sam for the first question.
Okay. So Judy asks, which Workday job aid will help me with a non-employee expense report / miscellaneous payment for CTA verification? We have a visiting PhD. We need to pay for his travel. So CTA verification is only through expense reports. There is a separate job aid. Let me quickly find that. I think I was looking at that a while ago. We recommend everyone who's looking for Workday related stuff to go to UW Connect Finance. It's uwconnect.uw.edu/finance. I know some of you were thinking it's not the most straightforward, but it does prove that there are some results in there. Let me find. I'm gonna put answer. Oops, I didn't mean that. Let me answer. I'll put it in the chat. I'm gonna paste a knowledge article here, but it's the link to the CTA verification process for expense reports. Again, this is going to be separated from the expense report job aid that Renee and I use. That one is spend authorizations and expense reports. This one I'm pasting is, again, the CTA verification for expense reports. So again, the process is a little different. Choosing the company is a little different than travel expense reports. But if you have any further questions, please, again, email us, or you can ask in here, and eventually we'll get to them, whether it's live or when we send out the follow-up email.
All right. So now I did see a question come in the chat about sharing what we're doing. So to follow along, to read the question that we're answering or see where we're at, you can click on the Q&A and go sort by most recent and scroll all the way up. Scroll past all 76 of them to the very top. That is where we will be starting and working down from. And so if you don't know what we're talking about, you can look at the question and follow along with us. All right. Liz Hunt's question. Oh my God, Siri, not talking to you. Liz Hunt's question. I don't purchase student travel, but I have students traveling soon. Some want to tack on extra days to their official UW travel account. How are price comparisons handled when their flights will be purchased on a CTA account? Are they better off to purchase their flights and get reimbursed, showing what the cost would have done for the official travel dates and times? I hope that makes sense. Thank you. Thank you, Liz Hunt, for your question. So CTAs, this is kind of a interesting spot we're at right now. I would say for CTAs, if they are taking personal time, they should / must book on their own and get reimbursed. There is frankly, no real way at this time for us to enforce and confirm that the comparison is valid, as we do for all expense report reimbursements or MP reimbursements where there is personal time. So if they are taking personal time and the original plan was to have their travel booked on a CTA, please have them book on their own and get reimbursed.
Okay, Caroline asks, does this apply if the upgrade is cheaper than the basic option? So I'm assuming we're going back, since it's the top, going back to car services. I'm not sure which thing you're applying to, but if the upgrade is cheaper than the UberX or Lyft, again, a screenshot of at the time of booking is gonna be required as documentation to prove or substantiate that it was, again, the cheaper or most economic option. So again, screenshots are your best friend. Please recommend it to all your travelers. It really does help when it comes to justifications.
Lauren Bachman asks, if comparisons are not allowed, why do you keep asking us for rideshare comparisons? So that is just for if they, like what Sam was recommending, for if they do it at the time of their booking. Those are the only comparisons we see as valid for lifts. We think of it as documentation rather than comparisons, but I guess one could say it is a comparison.
Bernadette asks, what would a business purpose be for comfort travel? That's a little bit of a sticky situation. Things like maybe a medical purpose, I would say, is the most appropriate if they need more legroom in the car. It's really hard to come by. We really haven't found any true business justification to use comfort. But if people do have some sort of medical accommodation they need for a larger car, that may work. But again, I don't have anything on the top of my head that is not related to a medical reason for a larger car, other than the other ones I've mentioned a while ago, comfort, or just an XL for like multiple people carpooling, or maybe of large equipment, etc.
Maggie Dean asks, what is an example of an allowable business justification for priority pickup? Sorry, Sam, could you? So if you didn't get that, sorry. Maggie Dean asks, what is an example of an allowable business justification for priority pickup? And I would say that's a similar situation to the previous question in that, frankly, it is hard to say. It depends on the reason the traveler themselves is needing the priority pickup. Off the top of my head, if I could think of something, I don't know. It's hard to say. Possibly something medical. Frankly, I know it's kind of a crazy example, but it is off the top of my head, so bear with me. If, say, one were traveling with a live human organ that needed to get somewhere, and you can't be waiting for your Uber to show up, so priority pickup. I think that would reasonably make sense in that scenario. If you have other scenarios where you want to run by us, shoot us an email.
Okay, James asks, how do you prorate the rideshare to subtract the rideshare premium? So if it's like a priority pickup upgrade, you would just remove it off, pretty straightforward when it comes to that. For the XL or a Comfort and there's no business justification, it's not reimbursable. It's one or the other. So again, there's no comparison that could be made, technically, a comparison, like after the trip comparison, I guess, to be more clear. If, again, they have no business justification for the upgrade, the ride itself is not reimbursable.
Julie asks, what would be acceptable business justifications for the upgrade? For example, if a researcher is traveling in the middle of the night for an international flight with gear, I would not flinch at a reservation for car that meets their needs. I think what you have mentioned is a perfectly acceptable business justification for an upgrade to a larger vehicle. So I'd say there's your example right there.
Megan asks, wait time fees, if they have a business justification, can they be reimbursed? Yes, if there is a clear explanation and it makes sense, it's user business related, yes, wait time fees can be reimbursed. Oh. So again, the previous example regarding the research. I took time to load equipment into the car and they charged me wait time fees. So again, if you're just loading things into a car, we just need context. If you type that into the memo or comment field of the ER or MP, we understand the wait time fees are allowed.
Chemi asks, rideshare upgrade, larger car. If the travelers are transporting large goods for UW business purpose, will it be reimbursable with justification? I would say yes. If they need a larger car to operate to reasonably go by the business, then yeah, I think that is perfectly reasonable with context, like Sam said, on the ER, which it would be the justification.
Okay. Julie asks, why aren't comparisons allowed? I use Ride Guru to regularly verify verify rates. So when it comes to ride shares, it's even more complex with time and when they do surge prices. Even more complex, I would say, than airfare or booking an airplane tickets. Maybe it might be useful for you and your department to use Ride Guru to verify rates, but again, the comparison it's mostly after the fact. It's just too hard to determine. Maybe there was a surge price at the time, maybe there wasn't, maybe there is an event happening, a concert happening. There's too many factors that we think or we believe that wouldn't provide a clear comparison when it comes to car services.
Heather Hudson asks, what if the upgraded options are the only reasonable available due to wait time / location? Clarification, arrival time, not wait time. I would say in that case, please document it and provide it along with the reimbursement. So basically, we need documentation. We cannot rely on these kinds of statements alone, specifically this kind of statement.
Is there any? Katie asked, can you provide an example of valid business reason for a rideshare upgrade? I think in the previous question, our previous one, or even Renee's, you have an Oregon, you need to go. You can do a rideshare upgrade. Again, context needs to be put into the MPRER, or if you're hauling large amounts of equipment as a researcher, or again, like our first reason was medical. We just need context in the reimbursement, and it should be good to go.
Adam Wendell asks if we have example receipts for these fees. And let me see what I have in my downloads. Yeah, I do not have any pre-prepared examples, but essentially, if you look at the receipt of the Lyft, picture a typical Lyft receipt. It'll show the Lyft fare, that it is the standard fare. It'll probably say thank you for riding and you rode with whoever, and it'll have the itemized amount for the Lyft fare, and then below it will begin to show the fees. There it'll show, like, for example, a wait time fee and how long they waited, how long the fee is, things like that. It'll also show what the charge was for priority pickup right there. We'll try to provide examples for the next one, or if you would like me to send you an example offline, Adam, I'll find something and redact it of personal information for you and send it to you.
Okay, I think we're moving on to our airfare comparisons. So Beth asks, shouldn't comparisons also be the same airlines as the original flight? We do not require that, but we do recommend it. There are people who do a lot of one-ways, you know who you are, who do Alaska to the destination and maybe United back. If you want to do United as the comparison, or Alaska, or even Delta, that is perfectly fine to do. Some people like to do Google Flights and just show us the list of everything possible, or Expedia or Kayak. We don't, again, require it to be the same airline. It just, preferably we'd like to see a list. But if you do a single trip for Alaska or Delta, and it's not the original airlines, that is fine. But again, highly recommends to do the same airlines, but not required.
Kelly Morris Rowe asks, do the estimates the UW uses take into account safety for women and minorities? And Kelly, could you confirm we're still talking about airfare comparisons here in the chat for me real quick? Just to make sure I answer your question correctly. I'll answer this in without response from Kelly. I'll answer in more of a general way. The UW, to take into account other factors such as safety, we do take into account safety for things like, I would say, for example, hotel. One of our exceptions for going over per diem is safety. However, the safety concern has to be acknowledged and approved by an administrator. I would say for things like airfare comparisons, if that was the context, in that case, we would not. However, we could get into the way of ADA accommodations, which may kind of play into that, but not exactly. Oh, this is more related to the rideshare options, but all transportation options. I would say that is a good question, and frankly, I think we can deliberate it and get back to you, Kelly. Thank you.
Okay. Waylon asks for going back to airfare comparisons for same destinations. What about stops and layovers? Sometimes you cannot get the exact same stop and layover. If you cannot get the same layover, that's perfectly fine. We recommend to get as close as possible, but it isn't always possible to be the exact same. If you find a non-stop, that's perfectly fine too. If you find another stop, maybe the stop is closer to the original flight stop. So if you stopped in, let's say, Chicago, but you found a stop somewhere else at a nearby state instead for that comparison, that's perfectly fine to do. It doesn't always, again, have to be the exact. Or again, you can also choose a nonstop because who wouldn't want a nonstop flight? International, you're continuing the question. International is the hardest. What I recommend, again, is you can find a nearby city in the same country, or you can provide a nonstop flight. Because ideally, again, we want, if possible, if it's most economical for travelers to go nonstop from one place to another without multiple stops. But if you have a certain situation, Waylon, please feel free to type it in the chat or email us.
Katie Seidel asks, I have gotten sendbacks for airfare for personal time. They had purchased separate one-way trips and the sendback was looking for a round trip comparison. Can you explain why a round trip comp is necessary when only one of the one-way airfares was affected? Now, this goes back to one of our travel info meetings when we announced that we'd be requiring this probably about last summer, a while ago. Essentially, we found that this is just in the case of after the fact comparisons. If the comparison was not provided at the time of booking, and if this one is the one that I'm thinking of, then this one was done after the fact. So for all after the fact comparisons, we would like to see a round trip comparison to better take into account the time span that is being traveled. And because we find that one ways are not exactly comparable, or essentially it's just choosing a random date in the future. And Jason, yes, this can be documented on our site. So thank you for the recommendation. We will look into making that.
Katie asks for the guidelines on flight comparisons, should you try to avoid bit travel holidays such as Thanksgiving if the original trip didn't occur around a holiday? Yes. So if your trip was in October and you booked a month out and your comparison a month out you're making at the time is around a holiday like Christmas or again Thanksgiving as it says in the question, you can adjust a week or two just to get around that. If it does happen a holiday, obviously everyone will know that it'll just skyrocket in price. So again, adjusting it by a week or two is not going to hurt anyone. And that's what we recommend to do if your comparison lands on a holiday.
Andrea de la Paz asks, we had a car service reimbursement for a guest denied by travel services because it was determined to be an upgrade, despite the fact limo service is allowed for reimbursement as per your website, and this was less expensive than a Lyft or Uber would have been. How do you determine such expenses to be considered upgrades? Our guests usually choose the least expensive options for travel, so not being able to reimburse them when they are spending their own money for UW Business is unacceptable. And Frank, if this is the one that I am thinking about, this was one where it was a luxury limo service. We researched the company and we found it to be essentially luxury. We did not find documentation that this was less expensive than a Lyft or Uber would have been. And if you do have that, please provide it. So if that determination was made, please provide it. But essentially, we looked into it and we found that this was the luxury version of the service.
Michael asks, can an email be sent out to the travel info list when the non-employee travel form gets updated? Yes. So a little oopsie on our part. We did update and upload the form before we emailed the mailing list. That is on us. We apologize for that. When we do update it next time, and hopefully it's sooner than later, maybe we'll come up with a new version. We'll see. What's in for the future? We will, again, email the mailing list with all the updates on there. And then we will also update and post on the website under important updates. If you go to the homepage, you scroll down, there is a section that says important updates. We can also post it on there saying updated non-employee form, here is the updates for this form, etc. But yes, we will do that next time we update the form. We will email everyone on the mailing list. So again, if you need to sign up for the mailing list, go to our homepage, scroll down, and then just sign up there. If you're lost, just email us and we'll add you to the list as well. Thank you.
Julia Vithukas states, I have to state that the administrative expense of sendbacks for many of the reasons that I have seen are actually more impactful and costly than the reason for the send back. And Sally Habegger says ditto, ditto, ditto with 2 exclamation marks. So yeah, I assume you're referring to the fact that sendbacks now have to go through all the approvals once again. Yeah, that is not ideal. And we would like to see that updated so that does not have to happen every time. But frankly, sendbacks are the only way for, I know updates, no matter how small, a lot of these do need to happen. And the way for that to happen is through a sendback. Because either way, even if an expense is changed, if say, regardless of us sending it back, if a traveler or if an initiator had clicked the change button on the expense, it will still have to go through all of the approval flows. So I'm sorry for the administrative impact and cost for the sendbacks, but we send things back for things that we feel are required per policy in this and per our policies. So that is the way that the system was set up, and that is the way that it is currently functioning. Although we will take your statement into account and we will look into finding ways to possibly reduce that. And Jason, to Jason's effect here, can we have all the reasons for the sendback, if applicable, instead of one sendback at a time? And Jason, frankly, we do try to put every reason for sending things back in one sendback. We do try to minimize sendbacks. Sometimes, you know, Sam and I, especially me, I know it may not seem it, but I am a human. And Sam is also a human. I know this. So sometimes we do miss things. And for that, I sincerely apologize. I know that getting something sent back can be frustrating, but we do try our best to make sure we catch everything all at once. But sometimes you just don't see everything on the first review. But we will always strive to improve. So yeah. And then I will say sometimes some sendbacks lead to other ones because information is provided in the new submission that warrants itself more additions that are required. So there's not much we can do for those situations. So just please try to include as much, please try to include all documentation that may be relevant at the time of submitting.
Okay, Audrey asks if employees use inclement weather as a reason for an upgrade to a larger vehicle, all-wheel drive, is that considered a valid reason? This is a case-by-case basis. I understand if you're going to maybe the Midwest in the middle of December, yes, that most likely will be okay. again, context, if maybe you have a documentation of the weather at that time, also helps us. If not, we do a little research into see if it actually is bad weather or if they're going to a remote location, then we will allow inclement weather. But again, I think this is better to be on a case-by-case basis and to reach out to us.
Cindy Lacer asks, when you say Adobe Acrobat, do you mean Acrobat Pro or Acrobat Reader, or does it work in both? And she adds that this is related to using the non-UW Traveler form. So we have Pro, but Pro is we just have it so we can make changes, or so we can actually edit the form itself. To fill out the form in the way that I was referring to, all you need is the free version of Adobe Acrobat. So anybody should be able to download that. And I frankly haven't tested it with other apps, other dedicated PDF viewers like Adobe, but it should work in much the same way for all of the other ones. I'll do some testing on that and see what other tools might be out there. Frankly, I've always just used Adobe since it's free. Now I have the fancy version through work, but it works through both of them. And you can always just print it out and fill it out. I've seen that before.
Okay. Ariana asks, I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. What report do we run to see the miscellaneous payment and non-employee travel claim form in Workday R1126 does not show them? And then Lena replies, R1372. So again, yes, it is R1372. That is to look for miscellaneous payments. R1126 is to look for expense reports that have been made for others. If you've made one for yourself, you just need to go to your expenses app, but eventually that'll turn into the Expenses Hub app as previously mentioned. And then there is, I guess, the R1142 for more expense report detail. I believe that also includes miscellaneous payment detail. But again, the ones we mostly use is 1126 for ERs and 1372 for miscellaneous payments.
Alan J. New says not all staff have access to Adobe Acrobat, and I believe all staff should have access to the free version at least, which does work for the form. I mean, heck, you can even use the browser viewer, even though it does have the glitch, but I believe it should work with any PDF viewer. But we find that Adobe Acrobat, including the free version, works best with it as it was created in Adobe. I know K Young mentions that asking non-UW to have Adobe as well. Adobe is high cost, so many do not have Adobe. So the free version does work for it, but I will to take into account some travelers who may not have access to a computer to have Adobe. In that case, then there's some other options to go about it. Mainly, you as the initiator could fill it out on behalf of them. You find that often that seems to be how usually it is done. Alternatively, it can be printed out and provided to them and then scanned in by the department. But yeah, like I said from a previous question, I'll look into other open source versions, other free Adobe free PDF viewers, and test their functionality with the form. Yeah, we'll see. It'll be a learning experience for all.
Okay, Caitlin asks, will you be removing the form entry option on the website to make it clear that the Adobe Acrobat is the way to do it? I don't believe we can remove it. We can possibly make a note on the side that says, please open an Adobe Acrobat, but when it automatically opens to a browser, it's hard to avoid that. I don't think there's an option when on the website to like auto download. But again, we can definitely make a note of it on the website, maybe in an asterisk or somewhere on the web page itself.
I do have one thing to add about that I think that also depends on your browser settings. Depending on your browser, I'm a Firefox guy myself, as you can see. Depending on your browser, you should be able to change it from automatically opening things to downloading it. I can't say exactly how to do that off the top of my head, but if you want to contact me offline for help to do that, I will help you out. Pam Stern asks, oh yeah, and Christy Garrett points out you can also just right click the link and it should give you an option to where to save it. Pam Stern asks, if an exec books an extra comfort Uber ride with no business justification, how do we handle the reimbursement if the reason was personal preference for booking that higher fare? We don't know in advance of receiving the receipt that they did this. I find that this is about the situation about half the time. And primarily, I think it is an issue of education. And I would recommend that you advise your travelers to not book extra comfort Uber rides or Lyft rides or anything, or, only do so if they can get the screenshot and show that it is cheaper. I know my 5th grade teacher used to always say you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So, I just recommend putting it out there at the very least. But if it still happens, yeah, I know, Cindy Lacer, I feel you on that. If it still happens, then, frankly, sometimes it will just not be reimbursable, or you could explore the option of a discretionary fund. That is, that is essentially the two options. So I would advising the travelers on that as well. Thank you for the question.
Okay, Alan has a little situation. So he mentions an international student travels to Hawaii for a conference, then travels back to Seattle, I assume, with a one-way ticket booked. He has provided comparison from Seattle to Hawaii and back, which is lower than that of the one-way ticket from Seattle to Hawaii to home country. His return date is open. Can we reimburse based off the comparison airfare? So basically, he traveled from his home country. Oh, yeah, from his home country to Hawaii, and then from Hawaii back to his home country, if I understand correctly. It should be a comparison. The comparison should be from his home country to Hawaii round trip, and then whatever is the lesser amount between the two should be reimbursed, unless they're currently their official duty station, I guess for a student would be UW campus. If they're officially on campus right now and staying in Seattle, then the comparison would be Seattle to Hawaii round trip. But let's take this offline, Alan. I'll reach out to you, or if you can put your email in the chat so I don't email the wrong person, and go further into this question.
Julie K. Hahn asks, are you adding more features to non-employee form, like adding sums rather than by hand? And I will say we do have the form does have the functionality to add sums. It just depends on I think certain boxes don't add, but the majority, essentially all of the boxes, when you enter an amount in the expense line, it will sum it at the bottom, and that sum is what we go off of. I think that also could depend on how you are opening it. So if that's wrong and you can elaborate, that would be great. As for other features, we are always exploring other possible ideas. If you have any ideas, please provide them to us. And we tried to lump everything together in one update, so there's not thousands of versions of the form out there. But we will probably update it more later down the line. And Christy Garrett has been providing some good recommendations in the chat for using the non-employee form, I'll say.
Katie asks, what should we do for the 2023 mileage for the non-employees on your form? The form only allows 2024 rates. This has come up. We can definitely re-put the 2023 rate form back on there. The only issue is that the privacy notice is not. We can update that as well. It is possible, and I think we can do that by tomorrow, end of week, and just make it clear that this is the 2023 mileage and this is 2024. Have the privacy notice on both. We apologize for that. But if you are an Acrobat Pro user, there is a way to update that calculation if you know how to do it. If you don't, we'll put the form up there anyway, but it is possible in both ways.
C. Crow asks, can you tell me again what the glitch involved in the non-UW travel form is? Thank you. It was that if you provide an answer to the EU GDPR question and then you provide an answer to the personal time question, it will eliminate your previous answer, and then vice versa. It'll just keep doing that. So basically just not letting you fully fill it out.
Okay, Ruth asks, how does this work over per diem? Adding extra fees could take a room from within per diem to over. Yeah, that's basically what it is. It is unfortunate that if the traveler has a hotel that's like on the edge of being over per diem or at per diem and it does go over due to the fees, unfortunately, we would have to ask for a per diem exception. Hopefully it's the conference hotel or vicinity clause 1, or if it's within the other 5. But if it does go over because of that one single fee, again, per diem exception is there for the traveler. Again, this is nothing that we installed or we put into action by ourselves. This is something by the state from the, again, Washington State Office of Financial Management. They have shifted this to include all those fees onto the room rate. And that is the decision the university has also followed. Ruth has also added, can extra fees be used as an exception? Unfortunately, no. It still has to fit within one of the 6 per diem exceptions provided on the website. If it doesn't fit any of those 6 exceptions, the traveler may only be reimbursed up to per diem rates for that location.
All right, we're coming up on time. We'll get through a few more questions, but seeing as there's still 65 in there, I do not believe we will be able to get to all of your questions. But we will make sure to save them all and answer them offline and provide them in an email to you all. All right. Next, Dennis Fang's question for a married couple visiting UW for both of their job interviews. They also brought their 2 children for the trip. The family stayed at an Airbnb during the interview duration. Could I reimburse the full amount of the Airbnb cost to them from the clinical medicine funds? So long as it is at or below per diem, you could reimburse them the full amount of the Airbnb. If it is above per diem, an exception will need to be required. If you are saying the clinical medicine funds if the clinical medicine funds, of which I am unfamiliar personally, if they are discretionary, then in that case you could. But yeah, I just like to emphasize whether or not it meets per diem. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Airbnb does not charge per person, so that is why.
Okay, Nicole goes back to resort fees. Does this mean resort fees must be included in the per diem rate while book or when booking? Yes. So if it doesn't include it, does include it in the confirmation, you see it there already, I would just set yourself up for success and include that resort fee into the per diem rate when you do reimbursement.
And I think this will be our last question, as we have 2 minutes left, and also my battery is about to die, and I swear I charged my laptop before this, so that's not on me. Alicia Hamilton asks, what about surcharges and assessments on lodging? These are not considered taxes, but are not called fees. Where do they fall? So specifically the SAM manual, the Office of Financial Management's, I don't know what SAM, do you know what SAM stands for? Basically, the state policy says that only taxes can be separate, can be reimbursed and not considered towards per diem. So therefore, everything else besides taxes has to be included in the room rate per the state policy. Okay. Oh, and it is stands for, the SAM manual stands for State Administrative and Accounting Manual, not the Samantha manual, as it may seem. Okay. Thank you all so much for coming.